Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I want to take 1 minute and thank Joel Schroeder once again for his superlative editing of the 41-minute compilation of the late Tony Sawyer's marvelous poetry readings in the tribute to her last week. Thank you, Joel Schroeder. We have two wonderful poets with us today, Fernando Salinas and Jerry Garcia. Fernando will read first and then Jerry. Fernando Albert Salinas has been associated with California Poets in the Schools as a member of the Board of Directors, a Ventura County area coordinator, and as a master poet teacher for over 10 years. He is an adjunct professor of English at Ventura College, the Ventura County area coordinator and recitation coach for the California Arts Council's Poetry Out Loud program, and the editor-in-chief for Spit Shine Publishing. As literary arts program coordinator for the Ventura County Arts Council, he focuses on enhancing the presence and appreciation of poetry and the spoken word. His written poetry has appeared in several publications, including Askew, Solo, Miramar, and Lummox Press. His newest collection of poetry, Toxic Masculinity, was published by Flower Song Press in 2021. A superb, captivating poet, Fernando Salinas.
Thank you for the introduction, Harry. I'll just jump right into it. This is directions. Descend through opaque smog and explode into an aerial view of Los Angeles. Dodge skyscrapers and swerve between parked cars headed south on the 405, exit Century Boulevard, and stop for a red light. A transient will drool over his bloated tongue, black gums, and spit between the gap of his front teeth into a soiled tube sock. Wipe your feet and then your eyes until the world seems a little brighter. The spit shine cleaner will stick out the lighter side of his hand for change, but the light will turn green. And with your glorious ass to him, he'll make two fists, every jagged fingernail digging into the palms of his hands except for his middle finger and thumbs, and he'll jab those first at the dirty brown sky and then at you. But you won't see him. Take a left and then another, past a man selling bundles of roses from an island, gabachos in designer business suits trading limp presidents for warm tamales, boy selling oranges packed in pillowcase-sized clear plastic bags, past kids selling drugs from street corners, and girls selling themselves from sidewalk curbs. You won't see your reflection in the liquor store window, cracked up and wise, but you might find my placazo on the old brick building where spray paint crosses out descendants on the graffiti family tree of La Raza. Ignore the homeless woman sitting with 5 children under the age of 4 by the adult bookstore. I need you. Rise back up off the streets, over the houses, watch planes roaring by, beginning their descent into LAX. Perch on the telephone pole tagged LNX. I'll be in the house there, in my room, on my knees, searching for the toy my abuelita said I'd never find until I asked you to forgive me for not believing in you. These poems are all from this recent book, Toxic Masculinity. This poem is called Asada. And for those of you who haven't heard the term, you know you've ordered it in a restaurant, but when we say we're going to have an asada, it just means we're going to have a barbecue, a get-together. He should have known better, but Alejandro made the mistake of hobbling over to my Tío Juan and ratting out Kiko for giving him a Charlie horse in the leg. And to make matters worse, he didn't say anything. He just stood there. You know what I mean. Hyperventilating, crying. Why are you crying? Is something broken? No words, no intelligible response. Mira, Consuela, I found La Llorona. My cousin's pride drained from his eyes, a little more respect lost with each tear shed. Tío Juan reached for his thick leather belt and asked, do you want me to give you a reason to cry? And just like that, Alejandro found his courage. My tío gripped Alejandro's wrist and told him to make a fist. Palo malo, palo malo. Ow, ow! Alejandro's head bounced away from his knuckles each time he punched himself in the ear. And to the whole family, Tío Juan shouted, laughing, look at him crying like a little girl. But then he placed his lips to Alejandro's ears and whispered, now go play where I don't have to hear you cry. And when he isn't looking, hit him back, but get him good so he doesn't forget it. And to make sure he learned, he slammed Alejandro's fist into the side of his head again. Palo malo. Because it stings demasiado there, you know? Some of you might recall the movie Colors. And growing up, it was an important movie to me. I grew up in Los Angeles. And at the time, of course, the gang violence between Bloods and Crips was very strong. And I remember a time when I was headed south on Hawthorne on my Batamobile. For those of you who don't know the street lingo or this translation, it basically means that I was walking. And two guys in a drop Chevy pickup, they rolled up, they hit me up, threw up urban American sign language, pointer fingers touching tips of thumbs like somebody who's counted to 3 or assuring you that everything was okay, but it wasn't. At least not if you were a Blood. You see, this here soldier was a British knight, BK, blood killer, and he was so blue he could have been a Grape Street Crip. Jerry curl juice stained a dark cloud onto navy blue upholstery. I looked up at the blue sky, then prayed, then panned from my heart to the gutter to make sure that I was wearing the appropriate colors for the occasion. It was late in '88. Easy E blast through stolen Serwins from the Kenwood on the dash, probably a Fosgate amp and an Uzi on his lap. So when he started to smile, I started to run. But before he started smiling, he lifted up his gun. I was pissed. I was wearing my Payless sneakers, but I juked zigzags into blind spots, ducked and dodged bullets past a pristine white 74 Monte Carlo, backseat looking like somebody took a sawed-off shotgun to the cherry Kool-Aid man. The time I hit the corner, I knew somebody was dead. Someone bleeding red or so true blue. When I got home, I asked my tío, hey, tío, am I a Blood or a Crip? And I guess you can figure what he told me. He said, tell him you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't know. Claim MOG. And I didn't know what any of that meant. It wasn't until later that I discovered Democrats wear blue, Republicans wear red, and that MOG meant just be in my own gang. It's hard to tell how much time has passed when you're reading. I feel like I should have been watching the clock more closely, but I might close with this one here. Let me know if I'm missing anything, Harry. I'll speak to anything you need me to, but otherwise I'm going to close with this poem. It's called Conspiracy Theories, and again, this comes from the book Toxic Masculinity. But while I was growing up, there were a lot of conspiracy theories, and it hasn't changed. There are a lot of conspiracy theories now. I don't know which ones to follow. I don't know which ones to belong to, but during my time, there was a couple particular ones. And this is about my grandmother. What hard-working Chicana wouldn't see the microwave oven as a divinely inspired, miraculous invention to relieve the modern day woman with 3 jobs of her obligation to cook for 5 kids, 4 live-in grandchildren, and a traditional machismo viejo. So for about a week, we became the scientific test subjects of the physiological effects of 10-cent frozen burritos on the human body. And if it weren't for my extremely paranoid Tío Pancho and his conspiracy theories, my grandma would have never had to cook another meal on the stove. It's population annihilation. ¿Sabes qué? The CIA is selling the inner city crack. It's population control. ¿Sabes qué? The AIDS epidemic is chemical and biological warfare, genocide. It's population control. ¿Sabes qué? I haven't seen any cockroaches in the kitchen since you got that microwave oven. If the cockroaches are laying low, it's probably time to let that thing go. It's probably population control. They want to take out Chicanos first. Microwave burritos and chimichangas. The Native American Indians are going to be next. Microwave popcorn. Just wait. There'll be microwave pizzas in every freezer in LA. Or Italians. I can't even watch the game with that thing humming its death song. All the radiation is messing up the reception. It's population control. ¿Y sabes qué? It was back. The aroma of homemade tortillas and Folgers coffee at 5 a.m., waking to the sound of my grumbling stomach, papas frying in chorizo, eggs sizzling in tablespoons of butter, pink beans boiling with a dash of salt, a cube of pork, onions and garlic, and my grandma slamming the cabinets to make sure she wasn't the only one awake before sunrise. Thank you for my time.
Thank you for such an outstanding reading, Fernando. You have so much vitality and strength and vulnerability and warmth for your family and for what you see and hear. When did you write your first poem?
Oh, I guess back in maybe like 79, maybe 79. And it was an assignment in a kindergarten class. And I don't remember exactly. There was some car, probably very similar to Knight Rider, the kit car. I'm sure I was fascinated by a talking car and the future.
And what is it about the poetry form that attracts you to it?
It's immediate. You can share it with audiences an hour after writing it. And I've written screenplays and plays and novels and video games, and it takes 3 to 6 months to write it. And it takes you may never share that script with an audience. So with the poem, I can write that poem and share it immediately, get an audience feedback and some criticism, critique. And so I love the immediacy of being able to share poetry as an art form.
When you sit down to write a poem, what do you focus on? Do you write out images or emotion or what you see? Words come to you. What causes you to write a poem?
Typically, it's a situation that I've seen or a story that I've heard, and I'm trying to take this event that could have taken any length of time, but to describe it to someone else could take a day or 2 days. And I rely very heavily on imagery. I'm trying to project into other people's minds what I've seen in mine. And so, yeah, I don't know that there's ever a particular thing. It could just be yesterday on my way home, I saw a man standing with his arms outstretched beside the freeway, spinning until he was dizzy and stumbling. And I don't know how to interpret that. He may have been dancing and having a wonderful day, or he may have been spinning to the point where he was going to be so dizzy that he would stumble into traffic and end his life. So it's something that I get to, a vision that I can relay to other people through my work. And it's a human experience that I'm trying to understand for myself and allowing others to as well.
Being a teacher and also working in poetry and the poets in the schools, what would you tell a young woman who's sitting down to write her first poem? What would you tell her to focus on?
I would say don't self-edit yourself. Don't create a block for yourself or a wall for yourself. Allow everything that pops into your mind to flow out. And if you end up with 10 pages that you've written because of every thought, even if it's, I don't know what to say here, I write that down. And then I can go back and edit the work later, cut it down to maybe 3 minutes, 1 to 2, 3 minutes. That's usually the window that I'm hoping for, is 1 minute to 3 minutes, so I can perform it at open mics. But I would say overwriting is okay. And then going back and cutting out the stuff that you don't need to convey your image or your message or your sound.
Who are some of the poets before you began writing seriously that you looked to, or who influenced you?
Oh, I guess I would have to say Shakespeare, because my background was theater and I started at a very young age. But after that, it would have to be Prince, because just the way he spoke about love, he was a very beautiful poet. And so, and I was at a time in my life where I had to write love poems, or poems that would sound wonderful to young girls my age's ears. So Prince and Shakespeare.
Could you tell us a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up and where you live now?
Absolutely. I was born in Los Angeles, Fox Hills, California, Culver City, as some would say, and moved around quite a bit. But a lot of my life experiences was Venice Beach, Santa Monica, Hawthorne, those areas. And then I ended up moving further away, Southgate, Corona, Riverside, and then transferred over to Ventura. Well, Santa Barbara first, and now I pretty much live in Ventura. That's where I spend most of my time, is Ventura and Ventura County.
My son was born in 1969 in Santa Monica, and he grew up on the beach south of the pier. And we used to go to the Venice Boardwalk all the time too. So I always have a very fond memories of those two places right now. What I saw you read at the Altadena Weekend Festival a while back, and I loved your reading, and I love some of the woman that read before you. I believe her name was Liviette, if that's her name. And you just had so much vitality as you do now. How often do you write poetry, and just anything? What do you read these days in terms of poetry? Okay. There's a writing group that I meet on Wednesdays with California Poets in Schools. It's open to the public, but that seems to be my one window where I don't have a schedule as I normally do to sit down and write. But Wednesday mornings from 9 to 11, or when I have the opportunity to write one poem, whatever comes out of my head, no preparation, we're offered a prompt and I create. I do have a book that I've been invited to publish. They're asking me for a manuscript for next year. So I find myself in a place where I know I need to get back to the craftsmanship of writing, and I need to create a schedule where I wake up, write for a couple hours, whatever I create, maybe revisit it in the evening and edit. But I think when it comes to art, the acquiring of information, what it is that we want to write about, comes through our own life experience and every day. So I'm constantly working on ideas in my mind. And if I see something that's interesting me, I'm storing that information so I can use it to craft into a poem later. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, your latest book is Toxic Masculinity. Could you just tell us a little bit about the form of that book and the themes in that book and how you came to write it? Absolutely. So Toxic Masculinity was not my original title for this book. It was going to be called The Pinche Piñata. And basically that means the effing piñata.
And I was told that maybe that wasn't the best title because I do work with K through 12 and explaining to students that I have a new book out called The F in Piñata was going to be rough. So, but the work itself is accumulation of 16 years of writing, examining the trials of being a boy in a machismo family, growing up rough, growing up in Los Angeles, around the gang violence, around patriotism, that the strong idea of what a man should be. And so this work speaks not just with my voice, but with others' voices and the stories they've told me. And I've conveying it through that there. So the original title being The Pinche Piñata meant life really beats us. And it beats us to the point where we finally crack open. And that's when all the good stuff comes from us and everyone runs up and wants to take a piece of us. When I was sharing this book with people, a lot of people misinterpreted the work as a glorification of the machismo. And my daughter, I had mentioned this to her and she said, Dad, you need to name your book Toxic Masculinity because it's about surviving trying to be a man or becoming a man and how men treat each other and how men treat women and so on and so forth. So really the title was inspired by my daughter, Alexis.
Well, one thing I've found, I'm sure you have too, is, we go through life and we experience joy, we experience sorrow, and whatever happens, we're able to channel that into a creative way. And even in grief, for example, just the very fact of writing that poem and the words get caught up in the rhythm. And that's a very healing aspect right there, giving it form. And so I'm glad that you're a creative person, and I'm glad that I met you. And, I love your poetry. And so thank you very much for coming on the show at MPTF. So thank you, Fernando Salinas.
Thank you, Harry.
Our next poet is Jerry Garcia. Jerry Garcia is a poet, photographer, and filmmaker from Los Angeles, California. He is a recent Pushcart nominee for a poem about his beloved and recently deceased dog, Jaffe. He has published 3 books of poetry, Trumpets in the Sky, On Summer Solstice Road, and the chapbook, Hitchhiking with the Guilty. He is a retired producer and editor of television commercials, documentaries, and motion picture previews. With his marvelous wife, Becky, he has recently moved to California's Coachella Valley, where he plans to continue writing and photographing the sacred desert. Here's a wonderful poet, Jerry Garcia.
Thank you, Harry. It's great to be in your show. Great to be with Fernando. Sorry about that. I'm going to dedicate this first poem to Fernando. Normally, I would edit it to Edward James Olmos after he did that movie, American Me. This is called Pochismo Me. Far from a serape or colored bandanas, my mother feared I would be scorned because her skin was brown. So she conjured a white child. In the parochial neighborhood of her mind, I spoke English, dressed in houndstooth and corduroy, chanted Latin and incense altars of a conqueror church to rise above those who would look like her. I whet appetites for salsa in the lacy bedrooms of pale-skinned princesses, while Big Ten firms placed me on their employee rosters. Invited into their masters, they would use the word Hispanic because Mexican was thought to be impolite. But in the barrio, I am just Pocho, a coconut, some think a sellout. It is true that I enjoy driving a BMW over the fabled Chevy. I'll take sushi over a burrito. I make love to blondes, not Latinas. This skin is not copper tone. I was born in East LA, and stand bewildered yet proud on this divide with my mother's color on my arms and her fears in my heart. My next poem was written on was not written, I keep saying that, it was conjured on a ride from Ventura County to my home along the beach side. It's called Human Touch. Headlights followed me like a jet squadron in formation, 4 lanes, 8 lights, blurring from my exhaustion, eyes reverted from rear view to red glowing dots ahead. When darkness came down like a curtain drawn, no lampposts, no cars, no reflections, completely opaque, like Sister Margaret Mary's story about the world's end. I became weightless, a sprite in ocean air. My vehicle no longer carried me. I became awash in crashing waves. The sea was black with white caps. Was it moonlight or a patrolman's flashlight? I might have been floating. I might have been flying. You found me in a hospital after days, you said. I might have been in outer space attempting inventory of countless stars, or maybe they were specks of sand at the bottom of the briny deep. You didn't have a clue where I had gone, but fed the dog and tended to the roses while waiting. You could be holding my hand right now, or I might be attached to a comet hurtling through the galaxies long before the earth held water or human touch came to be. This is the poem called Dog Years, which was nominated for a pushcart, for which I am grateful to my publisher, Eric Morago, and the Moontide Press. It's called Dog Years. We don't talk much. Jaffe doesn't leave my side except to be with my wife. When she is in the bedroom and I am in the den, he stretches like a rug across the hallway. A Secret Service agent watching its charges, eyeing our every move. Jaffe, named for a Jack Kerouac character, will someday be gone. Waking me at 3 a.m, forgetting that he needs to pee, that old man of a canine stands in the kitchen, stares at the floor tile, his mind apparently lost. I hold the door open, sniff for skunk. Like an old jalopy, he restarts, moving slowly over the threshold. Coyotes jump fences when it is worthwhile. Now I have become Jaffe's guard. When he returns, I offer the puppy treat he expects. Once a ploy suggests using the backyard as his potty. 15 years later, he has become our old couple's ritual. Named for a Jack Kerouac character, Jaffe the dog will soon be gone. Actually, he has left us, and that's my tribute to him. Those who have dogs or pets or ever had will know what I mean. All right, this next song, pardon me, is called Radiance. In the non-insulated garage of my mind, a lone mechanic cranks a vise, pressuring the cranium until stars spill through my ears. He bangs, clangs, and pings with a magic sheet metal hammer. Then he drills little holes. Bright shards fall onto my bed, illuminating the darkened room before floating freeform into the galaxy. It's a ride to be seen, a Studebaker Golden Hawk dodging in the flotsam and jetsam of space. When that manic car superimposes a sun, it looks luminous for a moment, flames out, and returns to my globe as a scorched hunk of steel. Earth no longer needs her exquisite beauty. When daylight rises, I devote myself to finding pieces of my once magnificent automobile and the gray matter that built it. Chasing that daring cipher of thought, I will scratch letters on paper or tap, tap, tap the keyboard with continued shades and color, flashing radiance in the quiet morning air. This next poem I'm going to dedicate to you, Harry. Your name's actually in it, and it's called I Guess It's Too Late to Be a Major League Baseball Player. It's written after the poet Bernadette Mayer's poem, Essay. It was once a poetry comp I followed. So it's kind of in the form of her poem, but with a totally different subject. I guess it's too late to be a Major League Baseball player. I guess it's too late to play any ball at all. I guess it's too late to begin a running routine. I guess I'll never join a baseball team. I guess I'm not jock enough to be a ball player. I guess I couldn't afford to give up my day job and learn to bunt. I guess baseball playing is just not in the cards anymore. I guess I am not suited to be a ball player. I guess I will never have a baseball mitt now. I guess I missed that summer play opportunity. I guess I'll have to give up all my dreams of becoming a ball player. I guess I'll never be a ball player now. I don't like baseball that much anyway, although the poet, Harry Northup, is a fan. Maybe someday I'll throw the ball around with a grandchild. I guess ball playing is really out. Fielding grounders and hitting balls, running around the bases. I guess the calisthenics are just too much for me. I'll never play ball at all. Too much exercising might take away from my poetry time. Who are the baseball playing poets? Was there ever an RBI leading poet? Fernando Perez was a ball player and a published poet, but he didn't play in the majors very long. Lots of poets write about baseball. Thayer wrote Casey at Bat. Updike, Corso, and Ferlinghetti wrote their national pastime tomes. William Carlos Williams wrote about the ball game crowd, even though he was a physician. Many poets do play ball, softball, sandball, and bush. They even teach their children t-ball. But I guess most poets tend to play away from the crowd. I don't think a poet would read a poem from the mound. Well, maybe. I've seen poetry read in stranger places. So why not play ball and write poetry? I guess it would be too hard to stop between bases when inspiration hits like a line drive to right field. As Harry said, I moved to the desert, moved to Palm Springs. One of my favorite places is going to Joshua Tree out here, so I'm going to have more opportunity now. But a couple of years ago, I started this poem called The Cleanliness of Sand. Sky lanterns flood the evening desert. Colors from heavens illuminate wilderness. The risks of misadventure brought me to this alcove of granite. Once a hazard to those who would be friends, I watched as families and colleagues glimmer as new constellations in this spectacle of space. The fierceness of galaxies frightened me. How long before I joined this richness in gas and matter? A hand I have not seen for almost a lifetime reaches through smoky constellations to tap my shoulder. Having survived a wasteland of recklessness, wisdom arrives amidst the desert buzz. I am not the salvation the world needs that I once thought I could be. With outstretched branches, a yucca tree blesses me. Mellow breeze awakens a shallow sleep. My body stands against a firm bed of brush and stone. Like a desert weed, my feet plant firmly in the sand. This next one was brand new. It's my attempt to write a sonnet. You can people can judge it. In most cases, I think it's got the 14 lines, so that's what I'll call it, a sonnet. It's called Two Lovers on a Bluff Watching Dusk Encroach. Silver birds fly from ochre clouds into grainy blue. Two phones pointing at turning sky. Heads in silhouette share pictures with one another. Beneath this outlook tableau, the brittle light of street lamps and headlights crisscross a dinner-time valley. Breezes blow, desert cool, faces float closer, lips touch, embrace tightens, warmth happens in chilling air. A tender pause at the end of day. The single shadow divides into two lovers clasping hands on a steep trudge to the parking lot. Arms stretched in stride, fingers slip away. A canyon of darkness widens between torsos. Car doors slam, two engines crank, tires squeal apart, driven different directions on the same well-traveled road. This is kind of going back to my pop culture kind of poems I like to write. It is called Holy Zimmerman, I Just Saw Bob Dylan. I saw 7 Orthodox rabbis and a gaggle of Catholic priests marching on the grounds of Oral Roberts University. These times are for praying and escaping the hierarchical milieu. Bless me, Father, for I am at felonious fault. On the 13th day of the 4th month, crows flew past my mother's window, left droppings of manic matter. Children had their eyes closed when a woolly dragon flew by, breathing insouciant flames on the trees of intelligence, burning embers, falling already cindered grounds. Acids burned earth's crust, not hallowed grounds, hollow, empty, out of form. In the ancient city, church holy waters turns black. There's a man in my gym who looks like Charles Bukowski. He rides the elliptical above a current of humanity. He strides to the clanking of weights, grunts, and groans. He is wearing a stained t-shirt and torn sweats. He looks sardonic among the spandex rear ends of unemployed actors and suburban wives. He drinks from a water bottle as though taking a swig of beer. If this were Bukowski, surely girlfriends and wives could have convinced him to act healthy. But as I dismount the treadmill, it occurs to me that there would be no more Bukowskis. This gregarious-looking gentleman is probably another retired businessman or high school coach. He's trying to mind his own business in this place where coughs echo like buzzing flies and suspended televisions cackle over a saloon-like din. So I have moved out of Los Angeles after having lived there all my life. I'm starting a book called, it's going to be called Exit LA or something to that effect. This poem is called Los Angeles, Not Always Sun-Filled and Glorious. Low-slung clouds hover, monsoon thick. Windshield wipers spread gelatin of road sludge, glowing red taillights blur, turn to stained glass. Across the road, oil-slick tires slither on asphalt. Fiberglass cracks like bamboo. Horns blow a klaxon chorus. Elite corporate soldiers in sullen gray suits join fashionistas and licensed skaters. Soaked clothing and heads covered with newspapers point at a motorist in distress. Drizzle steams on hot, congested streets. Collective spirit of wet chaos yearns for the next blue sky. And here's another poem about leaving Los Angeles and coming to Palm Springs, which is the home of mid-century modern. This poem is called Mid-Century Modern. Air raid sirens screamed into classrooms across Los Angeles County. Children all over town practiced duck and cover. Parochial schoolmates squeezed their blue-dressed bodies under plywood desks, unlikely protection from atomic bombs falling on our heads. On my 1 mile walk home from school, blue, green, yellow flags flapped over auto dealers showing America's best. Ford Mustangs, Chevy Camaros, Pontiac GTOs. Trudging along the main thoroughfare, muscle cars cut me off at crosswalks. When I got my license, I drove a yellow VW Bug and dated girls taller than me. Holding hands on Mulholland Drive, we watched lights sprinkle the valley below. Nighthawks maneuvered above the trill of a first kiss. For serious courting, Laurie's prime rib on Restaurant Row prepared Caesar salad tableside. French cuisine at the hard-to-say Teiche on Sunset, or first-time sushi in Little Tokyo. A far cry from pastrami at Garduno's or French dip at Philippe, the original. Googie architecture, Orange and Space Age was the epitome of the Jetsons' futurism. The name came from Googie's coffee shop on Sunset, where I had my first legal drink. Ships with its angular roof canopy and sunbeam toasters on the tables mustered legions of hungover teenagers. My rowdy friends could not resist doing Jack Nicholson 5 Easy Pieces imitations when the waitress brought bread to toast ourselves. Looking across the deserts, I see my hometown like watching a child grow. 60 years since the Cold War, nuclear threats return like a circle game. Sidewalks are tent cities of displaced veteran soldiers and the wandering jobless who have no shelter from a falling bomb. In LA, more buildings clutter the skyline. Would-be electric muscle cars silently cut children off at the curb. Googie's, now just another movie theater, has bad parking. I will drive to the burning desert, leaving this microcosm in flux for future generations, while I remain mid-century modern forever. Thank you for this time, Harry, to read my poetry. I'm going to close with a poem that's called Floating. It's the end poem of my book, Trumpets in the Sky. Floating, hollow out the trunk of a redwood tree and launch upon broken glass, skim the green-blue waves and cup the salty foam. Watch it dissipate like the shore you leave behind. Lay back in a rough-hewn hall, hands blocking the midday sun. Brackish spray cools the burn of forehead and cheeks, a grasp of freedom on the open sea. Night arrives with its celestial array, continued drifting in this boat, whittled from a life of misread instructions, lost among whitecaps of a badly printed map of unremarkable stars. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Jerry. Your poetry is excellent. You have such great clarity, and you have, it's elegiac, it's loving, it's warm. The poem for Jaffe, and then leaving Los Angeles, looking back, all the knowledge you have of growing up here and spending quite a bit of your life here, and you have such keen vision and it's also you have a sense of acceptance. I would like to ask you a question. You know, a few months ago, I came on your. You invited me to participate in the Valley Contemporary Poets Reading Series. How long has that series been going on, and how long were you the director of it?
Well, that's an interesting question. The series, the Valley Contemporary Poets, actually started in 1980 by a woman named Nan Hunt, who left us a couple of years ago. And it ran for something like 32, 33 years. And then it kind of fell apart. And it before that, it had people like Brandon Constantine and Elizabeth Iannacci as leaders. And Jamie O'Halloran was one time a leader of the BCP. What happened is that when I retired, I decided that I would revive it, and that goes back 4 years ago now. And just as I was getting ready to do that, the pandemic hit. So I started doing it as you've done this series on online, and it's been had a really good run for a couple of years. And then I left the organization and turned it over to Elizabeth Iannacci and Bryn Wickard and James Everett Jones to continue it. They have had a couple of readings. I have not been part of it because I spent the last 2 months moving, but I'm sure they're going to bring more to the world and hopefully start some live readings too. That would be a big combination. When I left, I did a reading at Jan Baroque, and it was actually our first live reading as it has a new name, VCP SoCal Poets. And that was a fun reading. And I got a nice goodbye from the members.
You know, being an LA guy and then you moved to the Palm Springs area, how did that come about? I mean, you know, you were so involved in the poetry scene here in LA. I know we have Zoom in our time, so it really doesn't matter where you live. Mm-hmm. But was it tough for you, or did you just said you had enough here and you wanted to have a new regeneration in your life? Yes.
Yes, there were some tough moments. If you read, a lot of my poetry is LA based, and yeah, I agree. I've been here. I've lived there in LA for 69 years. So it took me. My wife. What happened is my wife. I had been retired, and my wife retired. And we decided we need to downsize, as they say, and we sold our house, and that became our nest egg for the next 20 years or whatever it'll be. And we came to Palm Springs because we like it here. My poem, Mid-Century Modern, is based on a look that still thrives here. And quite frankly, the real estate, the cost of real estate was much cheaper here. So we actually downsized into a place that's about 500 square feet bigger than the home we had in LA.
You know, the poem you just mentioned, I believe it was in there, you mentioned ships.
Mm-hmm.
I always love to go on ships, the one on Olympic right by La Cienega.
Yeah.
You mentioned the toaster. You know, Michelle Clinton, she had a poem one time and she said it was called Toast. And she said, if you want a piece of toast the way you like it, you got to toast it yourself. You can never get it the way you want it when somebody else toasts it for you.
Yeah.
So, Fernando, why don't you join us? And all three of us will talk a little bit. How long have you two guys known each other?
Oh, gosh. Over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over 10 years.
Yeah, I think I met you at the the Avenue 50 studio at a reading there. And then we kind of ended up showing up at readings together. I was able, Fernando's actually also read for the VCP in the last year. So actually, I think I had you there twice.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Jerry and I didn't know as much as there is to know about Jerry, but there was a time when we were doing video poetry too, and Jerry sent in some stunning submission, like stuff to be included in these presentations, and so I'm glad we've stayed in touch. And
yeah, that's another thing about what I was running the VCP online for April for Poetry Month. I asked a bunch of poets to give me videos that I ran every day, which were prompts for poems. And they can still be found on the VCP website.
One thing, Jerry, your poetry, and also I assume through your editing, you have a very clear look at reality, what we see, not the reality inside the imagination, but what you see. Do you see a kinship between your editing and your writing poetry?
Oh, yes, absolutely. As we know, poetry and filmmaking share a lot of aspects, which is, there's image, there's audio, you make up sounds to be read. And what I find writing poetry is a lot of editing. And in writing poetry, I'm moving images around just like I would writing images on a moviola or or a video editing system.
I would imagine there's some poems of yours that just almost come out whole. It felt like Jaffe was just like, just complete right out of it. Or did you rework that a lot?
I wrote that poem after the true event where I took him out. He woke me up and I took him to the back door, and then he kind of forgot what he was there for. And when I went back to bed, I write on my phone. It was a little note pad on your phone, and I just wrote the first couple of lines there, and then I developed it. I worked with an editor. In this case, it was Yamato, who's an LA-based poet. And, I always look for other people to tear apart and help me put back together my work.
We are, this is MTTF, as you know, movie for people in the movie and TV business, in front of and behind the camera. What are a couple of your favorite movies, Fernando? And then the same to you, Jerry.
That's such a tough one. Put me on the spot bad, and there's probably a lot of people listening that want to hear their name spoken. But I don't know.
Harry just stole my question.
All right, you ask it, Jennifer.
I'll write down the answer to document it. But yeah, Harry, you gotta give a girl warning.
Got a guy, Harry.
Well,
I want to say this is the first time ever one of the crew members has written in and said, "I'm buying that book right away." So, toxic masculinity just got one more sale at least. I'm sure there have been plenty of episodes where people have purchased the books afterward, but not in the middle of it have I ever gotten that direct message.
Thank you.
How about you, Jerry? What are a couple of your films that you love?
Well, I watched The Matrix on TV last night, which is, I actually worked on the trailers for that and the whole, I only liked the first one really, but that's one. Harry, I like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And, it was one of Scorsese's, how do you say, out of not quite his own style. And yet he did this beautiful movie and cast it very well.
Ken Wakeford lived here in the Lodge and then the Mary Pickford home, and he shot Mean Streets and Alice. And Alice does have a totally different look, obviously, than Mean Streets. It has almost like a shimmering dream look.
Yeah,
that part of the country. Well, you two have just been superlative. So I want to thank you, Fernando Salinas and Jerry Garcia, once more. I would just like to take a minute and say that there'll be no, Jennifer mentioned this at the end of the last show, but there's going to be no live poetry show on July 4th, but on Tuesday, July 11th, Rich Ferguson and Chanel Brenner, two terrific poets, will be with us. So thank you both.
What, Harry, wait a second. I'm so sorry. Fernando, did you want to answer those questions? And Jerry, we still need your TV show.
It's very difficult. I would say that I would love watching anything by Spike Lee, any film by Spike Lee. Yeah.
So any Spike Lee joint.
Yeah. And television-wise, I'm a big Twilight Zone fan, and it's probably inspired me to continue writing because I love the writers of that show.
Wonderful. Jerry, do you have a favorite television series?
I'm a nuts for The West Wing, which we haven't seen in a while. I like a show on HBO called Boardwalk Empire. Mm-hmm. And then there's so many there. To me, film and television are like children. I have 3 children, and I can't love anyone more than the other. So that's where I feel about movies.
Wonderful. Guys, thank you so much. Harry, thank you. And even though we're not here next week, we are back in full force starting July 11th. The following Tuesday, July 18th, is the 500th episode of Creative Chaos.
Wow.
So I'm sure Harry will have some very special things planned for that day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you all.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.